Sai Ram. Navaratri greetings straight out of Prashanti Nilayam. Dear viewers, at the very outset, let us all, each of you and each of us here, together offer our very loving and grateful pranams to beloved Bhagawan for giving us the opportunity for a satsang in this auspicious season of Devi Navaratri. On the panel today is Ms. Aruna, a volunteer at the Sri Sathya Sai Media Center and a financial analyst by profession. Dr. Maitali Khanna, Assistant Professor of English, Sri Sathya Sai Institute of Higher Learning, Anantapur campus. We also have Dr. Suma, Head Department of Management and Commerce at the Sri Sathya Sai Institute of Higher Learning.
And last but not the least, we have Dr. Rani, who is the Head of Department of Languages and Literature.
All of us feel privileged, blessed and humbled at the same time to bring you this episode from Prashanti Nilayam. We must also make the disclaimer that we are not undisputed scholars in the topic that we are going to talk on. However, we make our best efforts on our path to self-realization and what little wisdom we have garnered as a result of our blessing and opportunity of proximity with Bhagawan and from our life experiences. That's what we bring to you in today's discussion. We're also aware that in our audience is a diverse variety. There is the Gen X, there is the Gen Y and the Gen Z all in one place in this audience. There must be the wise old women who have had all the rich experiences of life and lessons learnt therefrom and wisdom that has fruitioned from there. There might also be the digital natives of the 21st century who are looking for all answers to life from Professor Google. And as an example, what better time to talk about womanhood and glory than the Devi Navaratri time? And if you were to Google what the word woman itself means, you would be surprised to see that folk etymology considered the word woman a combination of the womb and man. You will also come across interesting acronyms for woman: wise, obedient, motherly, adorable, or nice. However, we all know that the concept of womanhood is much beyond all the superfluous understandings that we can get from maybe the internet. So here we are trying to tune into our inner net to pull out some pearls of gems of wisdom and precepts that we have had from our own beloved Bhagawan. Considering that our audience is a combination of people, I think we should have a multi-pronged approach, shouldn't we?
I too believe that. I think what we can try to do in this discussion is to try to look at the concept of womanhood from all perspectives: a spiritual perspective, a cultural, an intellectual, a scriptural, so that we can kind of cover all angles to it, and that way we would also do justice to the topic that we are discussing.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so this is the time of the year when the whole nation is actually celebrating the feminine principle. When we are doing the Devi Navaratri, we are actually worshipping the feminine principle, isn't it? And a lot of households, I'm sure, are going through this ritual of reading the Devi Mahatmyam or the Durga Saptashati, etc. So maybe it makes sense to begin from there, yes, to start our conversation from there. So maybe we should look at the scriptural perspective of womanhood from maybe our reading of Devi Bhagavatam, or yes.
And maybe we can relate all our different angles to this particular, using this as the anchor.
True, true. In fact, for each day of the Navaratri, I think one form of the goddess is worshipped. while we know that the Supreme Parashakti is the feminine principle, we also attribute different forms to her and worship her on a particular day of Navaratri. So that I somewhere feel that there must be something that is symbolic about the different forms that we worship. Is there some input that we can have on that?
So actually the story goes this way. The three Mahashaktis which were created by Devi Bhagavati, they further got manifested as three Shaktis. So these 9 Devis or 9 forms of Durgas are what we worship during the 9 days. All of us during this time worship Devi, and all of us know about all the different 9 forms of Devis, and we are familiar with their stories. So I will quickly touch upon the 9 forms of Devi Durga, and not just the story but also what each Devi, each form stands for, and where in us we can actually look for those virtues. Starting with day 1, we know we worship Devi Shailaputri, and Shailaputri, the word has come from Shail. Shail means the peak. Shaila means peak. The story, we know the story how Devi Sati was reborn as Devi Parvati to the king of mountains, Himavan. And she stands for, Shailaputri stands for the peak of any experience, peak of any feelings or emotions. In fact, it is in that peak of experience of feeling, where the divine consciousness emerge. So this aspect of Devi, actually looking at the symbolic point of view, it invokes in us the ability to give our 100% in every experience, every work, and also live every feeling or emotion or experience completely, every moment completely.
Yeah, so I was thinking, they say that Shailaputri, the actual abode of Shailaputri is the Mooladhara chakra, and Mooladhara is the first of the chakras. So awakening of that, because that's where the first day of Devi worship begins with Shailaputri's form, and her abode is Mooladhara. There seems to be something symbolic about it, because in her journey towards Lord Shiva, that's a starting point. So the opening up of the Mooladhara chakra, the awakening of that spiritual awareness is what will set you out in your journey itself. Exactly. So I think that's where it is a very crucial form of worship in my understanding.
Yeah. So in one sense we can think that the entire 9 days is the journey of evolution of the woman's internal energies and things. So maybe we could keep that perspective in mind as we go on.
Yes, because when you go to the 9th day of Siddhidatri, so if you set out here, you are actually going to be the beneficiary of all the siddhis.
Powers.
Yes.
The second day, when we worship Devi Brahmacharini. Brahmacharini, we know the story behind it, how Devi Parvati followed the strict path of penance in order to seek Lord Shiva. It's very symbolic, the name itself, because Brahmacharini, Brahma means infinity and Charini means to move. So Brahmacharini means moving in infinity. Now moving in infinity symbolizes no stagnation and moving continuously. So again, talking about how we can see this virtue in ourselves is this, manifests when we decide to move on in our life. Do not get stuck with petty things and just decide to, move on.
Actually, so it is very, very strange that we mention this, because one of the qualities which is negative qualities which is associated with women is about pettiness and a smaller way of thinking, etc. So what this tells me when I listen to you is that there is a possibility of overcoming this. In the sense, pettiness is probably the shadow quality. And the lighted quality must be the ability to transcend it, to go towards the Brahman in one sense.
Seeing the bigger picture.
Bigger picture, yeah.
Yeah, so I was also thinking of what Swami says about who is a brahmachari. The one who moves in the consciousness of Brahman is brahmachari. So I think that is that is a very high ideal that is expected, but the more we are conscious of that higher self, the less petty that we become.
Exactly.
So that's a natural outcome of one for the other, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and also, ma'am, when we say about letting go, you know, the brahmachari,
Not stagnating.
She said it is infinite movement. It is not just letting go of petty small things, it is letting go of huge obstacles, you know, the pain and the suffering which we undergo, being able to let go of it and move on is also a very, very strong aspect of a woman. So all of us know about this girl, 23 years of age, a little while ago, and at that point she was national level volleyball player and a football player for India, and she was traveling on a train and was pushed off the train.
Oh, are you talking about Arunima?
That's right, ma'am.
Yeah, okay.
So she happened to lose both her legs, and she got over that. Something like that happens, we generally tend to get into a lot of self-sympathy mode, and then tell ourselves, as such we feel as if we don't have an equal opportunity.
Or we ask, why me?
Yeah, why me? Why Swami? Why always me? So she got over that, you know, that biggest tragedy of her life, if we have to put it that way, and she went on to become the first female amputee to climb Mount Everest.
Oh my God.
And all that she speaks of now is how to, you know, let go of things which didn't work your way and find a new purpose in life, a new reason to live.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking of, we're talking about brahmacharini, right? And wasn't that the time also that she, Mother Goddess, she, as in her brahmacharini form, she did penance for nearly 5,000 years because she wanted to marry Lord Shiva, and nothing whatsoever could deter her from there.
It's a steely resolve.
Yeah, the steely resolve, that one-pointed focus on what you want to achieve, despite what might come your way. So I think that is also very naturally inbuilt in a woman.
Yeah, and she's also called, you know, on the process of her austerity, she had to give up so many things, food, water. You know, she's called Aparna because she stopped and she would eat only leaves. So, you know, the whole, her tapas is also a stage by stage control, you know, how she let go of many things, many of the bodily and mental kind of planes in order to go to the spiritual plane.
In fact, the story of Sathya and Savitri, whom Swami very often quoted, right? So, Savitri's story is also one of persistence and intelligence. How did she win over her husband's life back from Lord Yama? Surely by persistence and intelligent questions.
And she was not wavered by everything that Yama offered to deter her. You know, the whole story is about how Yama deters her and she never gives up in what she is looking for.
In fact, we also know the story of Ahilya Bai, and we know how she was the one who you know, who stands for women education. She was the one who started women education in India. And we know how, you know, after her marriage, she had many impediments in her, on her way. But still, that resolve of, no, I want to get educated. And we know how, you know, again we say that Durga is Jata Veda, she is the goddess of wisdom. So wisdom was very much inherent there in Ahilya, and she recognized that. And she just, you know, stood for that. I want to get educated. So all the obstacles or impediments at home, all the problems that came, nothing deterred her. She just moved on.
Yeah, actually in this context, I would like to add something which is probably close to all of us also, that Bhagawan started the women's college first. And that's education, and it started with the women's college. And I've always, you know, everybody wonders why it was so. It is, I think, other than what people normally say, that, you know, if you educate a woman, you educate a family, that is all true. But what is most important is, if you have women whose character is built, that means they are, all of us get introduced to this path towards God. To a great extent, the college plays an important part, or SSSIHL institutions play an important part in creating that thirst, or whatever you call as at least the beginning of the journey. So I think there also the brahmacharini, if it is maybe a long shot, but still I feel that is the beginning for every one of us.
Yes. In fact, even the quality of chastity is something that we can attribute to Mother Brahmacharini, and that's what Swami emphasizes in his Dharma Vahini.
Yeah, actually, I can go back to Savitri's story when you're talking about chastity. Even at the mental level, I'm sure we are aware of the story. So she was too good to be sought by a boy. So Ashupati, her father, tells her to go in search of the most suitable boy for her. And she travels the entire length and breadth of the kingdom and doesn't find one. And while she's returning, when she's crossing a forest is when she sees this young boy who's taking care of his blind parents. So she set her mind on him, and then she set her eyes on him first and her mind on him. She comes back and reports to King Ashupati, her father, in the presence of Narada, that this is the person she has found for herself. And Narada, being Narada, wanted to actually reveal the truth about the boy. The boy was Satyavan and was the son of
the exiled king.
Yeah, exiled king and queen from the nearby kingdom. And it was also true that he was going to have a lifespan of only 1 more year from then on. So everybody tried to dissuade Savitri from getting betrothed to Satyavan, but then she stood her ground, and one of the primary reasons I would think was chastity of thought. The fact that she set her eyes on somebody and mentally accepted him to be her future consort.
She wouldn't waver from that.
Yes, despite knowing that he is probably going to be alive only for 1 more year. So that kind of
it also speaks of a lot of self-confidence. She was pretty much confident that she can handle the pain or whatever would come with it. At that point of time is unknown.
We're talking about pain, very interesting. We all know that Sri Aurobindo wrote this text Savitri, right? The legend and the symbol. In fact, when Sri Aurobindo was asked why did he choose of all the heroines Savitri to write about?
Yeah, he could have written about anybody.
Yes, he says for all the intense tragedy she went through, she's one heroine who never shed a tear. And that is something that impressed Sri Aurobindo, and this is true. I think that fortitude, that endurance, the ability to withstand, the ability to welcome a tragedy and go through it with steely resolve, these are some things that are inherent in womanhood, I would think.
Yeah, we're naturally resilient.
Yeah.
So on day 3, we worship Mother Chandraghanta. Mother's forehead is bedecked with a crescent moon and a bell. Now it's very significant. Chandra stands for waning and waxing of mood and also shades of emotions, and Ghanta stands for sound, one sound, nad. And Chandra Ghanta talks about harmonizing all the thoughts, various shades of emotions into one nad, one sound. So when we talk about how this attribute of virtue can manifest in us, it is in the ability to control our senses, make our mind steady and self-restrain.
Yeah, I was also thinking when you said shades of moods of the mind, isn't that what also Swami says when he says the words three itself is made up of the 3 gunas, Sathya, right?
Yes,
We were talking
and
about.
yes, actually, when Swami says that if you want to define a woman, it consists of Sattva guna, Tamo guna and Rajo guna. And he says Sattva guna specifically stands for humility, forbearance, pursuit of truth, these kind of higher qualities. And Tamo guna stands for shyness, modesty. It can also be indolence, and those usually we understand Tamo guna to be indolence and other kind of negative shades also.
Bashfulness.
Yeah, but when Swami described it for a woman, he did say it's bashfulness and modesty and the stepping behind, which a woman does. And he said Ra or Rajas guna comes in the form of courage or the ability to stand up for something, and if you look at it, a woman has to use all these, and there is a harmonizing and a balance of these 3. But what is the amazing thing is we should know when to use which part, and that comes with higher wisdom.
And this idea of the moon connected to the mind, Chandrama Manaso
So Jataha, yes.
So when you talk about it, I think we're also talking about the waxing and the waning of the moon is related to the mood swings of the mind, of the human mind.
Also associated with women.
Yeah, largely associated with women, although it happens to every human being, I think, with a mind. But maybe that's where the role of steadying the mind comes. And Swami lays a lot of thrust on self-restraint, because that's a mental discipline, basically self-restraint.
And comes with practice.
Yeah, it comes with practice. So just as much as we give a lot of attention to our physical fitness, we should also give attention to our mental fitness. And mental fitness, I think, comes from this kind of mental disciplining, and self-restraint is one big way. And in very small ways, Swami used to be very particular. I'm sure, Suma, you'll remember, we had this very senior teacher at college, Lalitamba ma'am, okay, she used to teach Telugu. So this was one of those times in early 80s when Bhagawan was on the campus, and he used to stay there for a couple of days when he visited the campus. And everybody would go about their work as though, regular routine work, even though Bhagawan was there. And when she narrates this, we can't believe this. We listen to her in disbelief, because Swami is right there, and then everybody's classes are happening. Everybody is going to their classes. So one such time, it looks like, she's narrating this to us in the staff room. So she was going for a class with her textbook and attendance register and her chalk piece and all that, and Swami was coming down the corridor. So they came across each other, and she said, Swami Pad Namaskar, and Swami said, "Hey, class ka veltunava, you going for a class?" "Yes, Swami." So Swami was gracious to let her touch his feet. So she kept the books on the floor and touched Swami's feet, and when she looked up after the namaskar, she says, Swami's face was suddenly red and angry, and she didn't know the reason. And then Swami looked at the book. It was an attendance register, and she had covered it with a newspaper. And the newspaper seems to have had the picture of a movie poster with the actors and actresses, not in an altogether desirable format. So Swami looks at her, and Swami says, "Is this what you're carrying to your class? Are the students going to listen to what you teach, or are they going to look at your book cover?" So the point is, to that minute detail, Bhagawan was particular that we keep the gateways of our senses restricted with what enters it and what does not.
And in the age of brahmacharya, in one sense, when students are young and following it, the control of the senses is an important lesson.
It has to happen right from a very early age. Generally, ma'am, I hear a lot of stuff saying, oh, self-restraint is equal to suppression. Oh, you guys are trying to oppress us, suppress us. But self-restraint is more synonymous to self-discipline, and which has to start pretty early in life. If it has to become a habit, it has to become a habit. So there was this research, some of the neurologists, they've done some research on how the brain patterns change. So they say, when you are angry and you try and control your anger, it actually tells your brain to rewire all of that energy to make it a more calming and loving effect. So when you control an anger, like say count backwards for 10 to 20 numbers.
Swami would say drink a glass of water.
Any which ways. So the brain quickly rewires in those 1-2 minutes, and you become very calming and loving to the same person or to the same event. And there's an interesting little experiment they've done on kids. So they've got this bunch of kids and told them each of them would get a bowl of marshmallows. And if they want to eat it right away, they can eat the bowl. If they can stay for a while and wait, they'll give them an extra bowl or an extra marshmallow. So, and then they left the room and they were watching the kids. And then they realized some of the kids were restless. So they went and picked their bowl and had their marshmallows done. Instant gratification. But some of the kids were trying to divert themselves just because they know, okay, if I wait and I'm going to get not just more marshmallows, I will be rewarded and I will be looked upon like somebody who could stick to their stand. And there were half of those kids who really didn't touch a single marshmallow. After 40 minutes or 30 minutes when they stepped back in, then they say as they started to observe these kids when they grew up, they went on to become super successful in their lives. Because right from when they were a kid, they could control their impulse. They could keep it in track. When I say control, don't kill your desires. Keep it on track. Maintain a nice track for yourself. And all these kids, they could see that they were more patient and less impulsive when they grew up to become very good, successful professionals.
Yeah, so there's a lot that one achieves if the mind is tamed.
In fact, I think it is so meaningful and so relevant when we look at Swami's hostel's routine, the strict routine that the students go through in the hostel. I'm sure that directs their mind to discipline, conscious practice of discipline, and that is absorbed.
Yeah. In fact, Swami says, keep saying, I am man, I am not an animal. Because animal behavior is impulsive. When you say I am man, that means I am master of that impulse. So probably
even if you look at the cycle of evolution, from minerals we evolved into plants, and then we evolved into animals, we evolved into man, and then we have the propensity to become the divine. So what they say is, when you are at the evolutionary stage of being a human being, you have some of the dregs and remnants of your previous cycle, which is the animal qualities. And you also have the propensity and the abilities to evolve into the next level, which is the godly level. So a man will have some part of the bestial nature and some part of the propensities for divine nature. So what we consciously lay stress on, what we consciously choose to nurture in us, is what we will become. So there is a huge possibility that man actually declines to the level of an animal or evolves into the level of the divine. So the right thrust that we give to both these things that are present in the human beings, I think that's where the mind and the importance that we have to lay to the discipline of mind comes.
So I think one more thing which I would like to add here is, like, we are looking now about, say, restraining your senses or something. I think there is even finer quality, like what would you call, tendencies of the mind, which Bhagawan can sometimes has helped us to control.
In fact, ma'am, and I was just thinking about that experience. In 2005, Swami had called us for interview, the whole campus, and Swami, not angry, but that the strict mother, he was instructing us, see, all of you are girls, and you have to be very careful how you behave, how you dress up, and how do you look. And then Swami said, see, when you walk from dormitory to mandir, all of you look here, there, up, down. Don't do that. Look down and walk, because you do not know, your eyes are the gateway to evil. You do not know what evil you are welcoming through your eyes. And even, you have to be very careful where you smile, where you do not smile, how much you open your mouth to even smile. So that much of constraint. Says for a woman, as that maybe the tamas quality, that modesty, even in smiling, is very important. So he was like, as a strict mother, really used to direct and instruct as, his own daughters.
There's a very similar thing, actually, the same thing. During summer course, we used to have in 90s, early 2000, when we used to have the summer course, one of those times when Bhagawan was distributing the badge, the book and the pen, he would give it so lovingly with his own hands, right? So while Swami was giving, and in the next day or the day after, the summer course was going to begin, and then Swami gave us the same instruction, because we had to go from the hostel where the girls stayed to the dining hall, which is a little way away. So Swami used the term kaki drishti. He said, when you walk in the line, don't look here, there, everywhere. That is kaki drishti. Crows do that. In fact, I remember it was also a bit of my improvement on my GK, because I started observing crows after that, however insignificant that was. I really noticed that they keep looking here and there, and Swami said, walk like my children. Look down and walk, he said. So, and connected to what? Because the senses are the gateways to good and evil. The lesser you see, the lesser your mind is crowded with or cluttered with what is not required. Yeah.
I think the where I was trying to take it is that even mental aberrations, like this happened in one of my interviews. And Swami sat, as soon as we entered, he made me sit in front of him, and he started telling me, okay, who did what to you? So and so has done, he mentioned names of people, and then he started saying, so and so troubled you like this, so and so did this to you, so and so, isn't it? Tell me about it. It first took me to a shock, but it was a test. I didn't realize it at that point of time, and I just, you know, said, Swami, you are God and you know everything. There is nothing I have to tell you. You know, it just came out of my mouth, and that was one of the few times I said the right thing, probably. But, and then Swami smiled. And then, you know, one of the nature for women is to complain. You know, the tendency to nitpick and go on about it, and you know, it's a standard joke about how women constantly nag everybody by being complaining. And actually that's not a real nature of the woman. I mean, it is possible for her to rise above that, and I think that was the lesson that I learnt out of that particular. So what I'm trying to say, it's not merely the control of the senses, it's even the other you know, machinations of the mind which Swami actually is extolling us to overcome.
Especially with women, it is very important because the way she has to bring that harmony, serenity, calmness in her own house. So for that, first her own mind, moods, emotions have to be controlled.
And she has to be a happy person.
Yes. Okay. Now coming to day 4. On the day 4, we worship Kushmanda Mata, and it is said that when the universe was non-existent and there was darkness all around, then Kushmanda, she smiled, and with her radiating smile, she created the little cosmic egg.
Yeah, Ku is standing for little, Ushma is the warmth that is required for birth to happen, and Anda is of course the egg, right? So I think it's very beautiful that with a smile of the goddess, entire darkness vanished and the entire cosmos appeared. Look at the power there is in us, in a smile. Yes.
In fact, it is very significant that in Sanskrit, pumpkin is called as Kushmanda. So pumpkin, if we see, has a unique property of absorbing and radiating prana, and it is the most pranic vegetables on this planet. So Divine Mother manifests herself as prana, and that's what we worship when we worship Kushmanda. Now coming to how it manifests in us, it is in the ability to expand our consciousness, definitely to create as women, but expand our consciousness and embrace others, embrace everybody with some empathy.
Okay, so coming to the expanded intellect, ma'am, we all know Eleanor Roosevelt. She had much more than what just being a first lady of the US. She was the longest serving first lady for 4 terms, which is 16 years, starting from 1900s. It's a known fact she was very intelligent. She was the one who came up with inclusiveness of women in an era where no married woman had a career. So she didn't want to sit back just as a first lady. She started to hold press conferences. She would address the National Convention Party gatherings. And she also said, look, I am not going to fight for equal pay. I'm going to earn my equal pay. So within the first term, she started to earn as much as Franklin Roosevelt was earning, just by giving lectures, writing books. And she just didn't stop there. She wanted the entire US culture regarding inclusiveness of women to change. So she would tell the newspapers or the press teams who would come to meet her that they should definitely get a female journalist. And she would directly, indirectly influence the whole cultural setup in the US in 1900s. Just not just by her intellect, she also used her offices for a good purpose, for a larger, expanded view of having to include women and help them come up the thing. And the best part about Eleanor is whatever she earned, she would give all of that away in charity. So that made her the most admired woman almost for 12 to 13 times in a row. She was listed as the most admired woman.
I think big-heartedness is a given when it comes to a woman. You expect
actually,
it comes naturally to us.
You are talking about a president's wife or the first lady. I heard of a story that is in interior of Andhra Pradesh. So there was this very old, poor lady who lived in a village. And she had what we would call the motherly instinct very high in her. So when she happened to tend to somebody who was dying, the last few breaths are there and a few days, and then she understood how important care is at that point of time, and then she made it her practice. She would search for people who are destitute, beggars and on the road or anywhere in their dying moments, and then bring them home and actually tend to them. And over a period of time, the municipality also got to know, and then they started giving her cues, see somebody is dying here or somebody. And over a time, more than 100 people, she did this. And it's not an easy thing to tend somebody in their last moments.
Mother Teresa of South India.
Yeah, really, literally. And what? Without education, I think. So it's the natural quality of the heart itself, which is coming out and manifesting in that. So definitely I would agree that there is that empathy quality in women.
In fact, I think this giving is fulfilling. There is a psychological state called helper's high. So what happens in the helper's high is the brain produces endomorphins, which makes us automatically or naturally happy. So in these kind of situations where we are serving others, giving something, our part to others, empathizing, sympathizing, that very naturally, produces these endomorphins in the brain, and actually it is fulfilling, it's helping our own self. So it's not like we are sacrificing, no, it is, we are actually
our own joy is the reward for what we
yes.
do for others.
Yes.
But we are talking about an American lady or somebody we don't know. We can't really afford to forget our own mother Ishwarama, right?
Exactly.
So in the 1970s, Bhagawan was sitting in P.K. Sawant's house and they were having this question answer session. So Swami was letting everybody ask a question, and there was somebody who asked Swami a question. So, did you choose your mother? He said, yes, I did. And when I read that, I was asking myself this question. When God had a choice, why did he choose someone illiterate, somebody poor, somebody from the remotest corner of the country? Would there have been a reason? And then as I kept mulling over it, I realized despite having somebody illiterate and from a remote region, she was probably a pious woman that he chose. But it doesn't end there. Now when I'm listening to this conversation, I also feel it is because of her ability for an expanded vision to embrace. Because if any of us is here, it is because of simple desires that she expressed to her divine son. She asked for the hospital or the dispensary, which became the massive hospital we have. We are all part of the educational system that is actually a
her wish.
Yes, her
promise
wish.
Of Mother Ishwarama.
Yes. So I think if a woman has a vision beyond her family for the society and for humanity at large, what huge contribution it can do is what we see from Mother Ishwarama's life itself. So that need to live beyond oneself is a message that comes very straight and clear from this, I would think.
All encompassing motherly love.
Yes, yes, true.